We have a bit of an interesting project on the bench today. We have a pretty standard Ruger 22 pistol. This particular one is the Mark IV Target. The Target model comes with a little bit nicer sights. This is an MK. It's not the 2245, so it does have the aluminum frame. This one's pretty nice. I've had it for a few months, put a couple hundred rounds through it, shoots great. The only modification I've done so far is removing the magazine safety from the mechanism, so it will fire without the magazine. Makes the trigger a lot smoother. So my only complaint really with this gun is it's a little loud. So our interesting project for today is going to be taking this brand new AAC Element 2. You can see it's clean inside. I just got this on a Form 3 the other day. We're going to take this 5.5-inch barrel on the Mark IV and we're going to shorten it down to 2 inches and then cut our threads. So the threads should be just proud of the front of the receiver here. And to give you an idea of how short this is going to be, the bolt face is right about here for the receiver opening. So when we cut it down to about 2 inches, it's going to put the end of the barrel right there. And the threads will be about a 1/2 inch long. So just proud of the receiver. That's where the threads are going to be. So we won't have front sight, anything like that. This is just to be quiet. So the suppressor threaded on will look just about like this. So let's take this over to, well, first let's get it taken apart. Get it taken over to the lathe and chucked up and chop that barrel off. So the one nice thing about the Mark IV as opposed to the Mark III and earlier models is how easy this thing comes apart. So obviously first we're going to check to make sure this thing's unloaded, which it is. Then with the gun up on safe, it's as simple as pushing this button on the back, and then the top half comes off. And we're just going to pull the bolt out. Then we're going to chuck it up in the lathe. We should be able to leave the backside on. It should fit through just fine. We're going to clamp it up and indicate off the front of the receiver face and measure out to where we're going to cut it off. So over here at the lathe, first thing we're going to do is get this chucked up. And then we're going to use the 4-jaw chuck. And we're going to indicate off the outside diameter of the barrel first. Get this parted off at 2 inches. Then we're going to insert a gauge pin into the bore, re-indicate off the gauge pin so we can make sure our crown and our threads are concentric to the bore. Then we'll crown the barrel, thread it, and then it should be ready to go. So as you can see, I dialed indicated this in. It's within a few thousandths, so that should be okay just to part it off. We'll be a little more meticulous when we cut the crown and the threads. So here we go. So we got our cutoff tool installed on the lathe. We're going to be running about 200 RPM. So let's get it fired up and cut off. So as you can see, we did dial this in, if you remember, off the outside diameter of the barrel, just to show you how low quality 22 barrels usually are. I haven't adjusted the chuck at all, but you can see we're probably, 14 or so thousandths off. So the bore of the barrel is about 14 thousandths out of concentricity with the outside diameter. So we're gonna get this redialed in and cut the crown. So since this is my own personal gun, we're not going to use anything fancy to crown it. We're just going to use a spot drill. These cuts flutes at about a 35-degree angle. We'll just spin it in on the tailstock and get it crowned. Now we're going to come in with a cutoff tool and cut a small thread relief at the back of the threads. So we switched over to our threading tool. We got the dials on the cross slide zeroed out. So first we're going to cut a chamfer on the front of the barrel for the threads to start, and then we're going to thread it down to 1/2 28. So now that we have the threads cut, we're going to do two things. We're going to clean them up quick with a file, take away a burr on the front edge, and then we're going to hit them with a thread file and then check to see if the suppressor threads on. We cleaned up, we got the suppressor. We'll see if it threads right on. There we go. Threads on pretty smooth, threads are pretty tight. With that, so now that this thing's done, we'll throw an alignment gate rod in it before we head to the range just to check the concentricity. You know, we dialed in everything, so it should be pretty good, but one last double check. So all that's left is to put it back together and take it to the range and see how it shoots.